What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another week of NFL picks, and it is Thanksgiving weekend. It is a tradition that we've had for God knows how long, man. Amazing game of weeks coming up. We're finally in the final stretch of this NFL season. You can really honestly say it starts this weekend. Has some amazing games on Thanksgiving, 3 amazing games. Got a Black Friday game this year for the first time ever. Typical Sunday slate, some great games in there. Wrap it all up Monday night. Man, it's Thanksgiving weekend. What would Thanksgiving be without the NFL? So let's get right into it. Results so far. Last week went 10-4. Good week for me. After I think I only won 6 games the previous week. It was a good week for me. That's more like how I want it. Overall record so far 104-60. Lock of the week 8-3. Upset of the week 4-7. All right, so there are no bye weeks this week. We have 16 games on the slate this week. All 32 teams are playing. And it all starts off with the traditional 12:30 kickoff in Detroit on Thanksgiving. Depending on when you do eat your Thanksgiving dinner, typically for me, when we're saying grace, enjoying the turkey, mac and cheese, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, whatever you have at your Thanksgiving dinner. This is the game that is on. I'm an early eater with me and my family. So man, this has been a tradition for years in Detroit. And for many years, it was kind of one that was hard to watch because the Lions sucked, but that has changed. The Lions having their best season in years, 8-2, had an amazing win on Sunday. Great comeback win versus Chicago. They didn't give up in it. Got to give credit, man, to Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes. We know they've turned that thing around. And now the tradition comes around, and they're in a completely different spot that they haven't been in years. Welcoming the Green Bay Packers into town, who are also in a spot they really haven't been in much in years. They're 4-6. They're coming off a win versus the Chargers. It's been up and down for the Packers. But with all of that being said, man, I still definitely feel like for the Green Bay Packers, if they can find a way to win this game, then they are right in the thick of it in the NFC playoff race. They get back into that contention maybe for the 7th seed. Minnesota did just lose. You got all those teams there. The Rams, 1, Washington, depending on the result of their game. So this kind of is a big game for the Packers as well to really stay in it. But I got to be honest, man. I really don't see the Lions losing this game. I don't see a way Detroit loses this game. I could definitely see it being a close game. I think it will be. But, man, it ultimately just feels like, this Lions team, it feels like, once again, the duo of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be what wins this for Detroit. Jared Goff, you like to see him have a bounce-back week after the game he had versus Chicago last week, despite the win. They really got in that hole because Jared Goff threw 3 interceptions. But it feels like they're going to definitely lean on David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs to control this game. I definitely think Green Bay can keep it close. I don't see Aaron Jones playing in this game. I don't know what the status on him is. He might be out the full season. I don't know because that injury, I know it didn't look good. But one way or another, man, it feels like that dude is going to be what carries Detroit to their first Thanksgiving win in God knows how long, man. But I'm going to go ahead and pick the Lions here. All right, 4:30 in Jerry World. It is the game we're all going to be seated around our TVs for. the Cowboys on Thanksgiving, the Dallas Cowboys and Detroit Lions. What would Thanksgiving Day be without those two teams? And what would Thanksgiving really be without Dallas and Washington? That's really been a marquee Thanksgiving matchup going back years. I know they haven't faced the Cowboys on Thanksgiving for a few years now. But overall, man, I think that's really what you got to chop it down to. This is really a traditional Thanksgiving matchup here. This is a game I think you look at and say the Cowboys should definitely win. They should keep it rolling. But, man, I got to be honest. I really honestly think Week 12 could definitely be an upset week. I think you got a lot of games that spell upset. And it was really hard to pick an upset of the week this week. I'm actually going to go ahead and say this is my upset of the week because there were so many games you could consider the upset of the week. I'm going to go ahead and say it's this one because I don't think many people are expecting Washington to win. It feels like that Washington offense is going to come out. They disappointed last week, but they're going to come out. Eric Bieniemy is going to draw up a game plan, and they're going to get that thing going with those weapons. And it feels like, man, the Cowboys have not had the best history on Thanksgiving. I know they won last year versus the Giants, but, man, they haven't had the best history on Thanksgiving these past few years. So I'm actually going to go ahead and say Washington wins here. They're fighting for Ron Rivera. And if you get Washington in a spot where they're fighting for their coach, I think it's been proven that, they can win these type of games. Another thing, too, I think Dallas is on their 11-game home winning streak. We know what Washington has been famous for. So, yeah, man, I'm actually going to go ahead and say this is going to be my upset of the week. Washington pulls this one out. And Thanksgiving night, I really like the Thanksgiving night games, man. I really do. Because obviously we know Detroit and Dallas 12:30 and 4:30, but that Thanksgiving night on NBC, that is the game that you see has a lot of, they have a new team really coming every year. It was the Falcons and Saints, couple years in a row, which, we're going to talk about all that game, not just in a minute, but all this week. But with that being said, I really like Thanksgiving night, man. You get to see different teams every year. And this year it's San Francisco and Seattle. San Francisco, they're getting back on track after losing 3 straight. And Seattle, man, it was a tough loss versus the Rams. And they don't have a very easy schedule, to say the least, these next few games, man. So this, you can definitely say is a game, you would like to win if you're Seattle. But the odds are stacked against you. But I'm actually, man, I really do want to pick Seattle here. But the big story for the Seahawks this season has been that offense's inconsistency. The defense has kept them in games. And I could honestly see them keeping them in it this one as well. But it just feels like that offense, they struggle to get going. We know how dominant San Francisco's defense is. Adding Chase Young has kind of been a whole new element to it. You got to pick the 49ers here. I really honestly wanted to pick Seattle. If their offense was more consistent, then I probably honestly would. But it really is hard to pick the Seahawks knowing that, they have been inconsistent with that offense. I think their defense can keep them in it. This could get out of hand. Who knows? But I don't think the defense will allow that. I think they could make a push to win late in this game, but I think they fall short. I think the 49ers defense is going to be the story. They're going to just brutalize that Seattle offense. It's been inconsistent. And they pick up the win here. Move on to Black Friday. We have a Black Friday game this year, so you get all those discounts. Everyone's going crazy at the Walmart. You got these two teams playing on Amazon. The Dolphins 7-3. Got to win versus the Raiders, but you didn't see that explosiveness you're used to seeing from Miami that we've seen earlier in the year. And the Jets, man, they have a great defense. They even have weapons on offense, but quarterback play has been killing them. I mean, it's Tim Boyle starting now. Until maybe does Aaron Rodgers come back if they're in playoff contention. If not, it could very well be Tim Boyle the rest of the year. But as I said, man, I could definitely see this being an upset week, and you can definitely call me crazy for saying this. However, with that all being said, man, it feels like this is going to be a game that the Jets this feels like this could finally be the game. Sauce Gardner could finally be the corner that is able to contain Tyreek. Obviously, I have Waddle, but that Jets defense is good. Get pressure onto it, and you lock down Tyreek Hill, and I could definitely see that happening. I'm going to go with the Jets here. I said I think this is going to be another big upset week in the NFL. You're going to have a lot of games where you see teams win that probably shouldn't. So, yeah, I think this is going to be a game that Jets defense finally shuts down Miami's offense. And they do enough to pick up the win here. Staying in it, at least we're now in that playoff race. All right, next game you have here, heading into the Sunday window. 4-6 Tampa Bay. You know, the Bucs have been really up and down. They started off the year hot, and they've kind of came back down to earth. The Colts also 500, 5-5, even though they lost Anthony Richardson. They've been able to make the most out of it up to this point. They're coming off their bye. Man, this just feels like the game that this is a game that's going to come down to Tampa Bay's receivers. I feel like you get the ball in the hands of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and they can have big days. Granted, I think this Indianapolis defense, kind of a middle pack defense, but I'm going to go ahead and say that the Buccaneers actually win here. I think primarily because you'll see Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, you'll see those guys go off. Baker getting in the hands of his receivers. DeForest Buckner could definitely wreck this game for Tampa Bay, but if you can get the ball into the hands of Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, I think they're going to make the plays, and Tampa Bay comes out on top here. This next game, man, this is an absolute shit bowl, however you want to look at it. But it is a former Super Bowl rematch also. The Patriots and Giants, both these teams are absolutely awful. I don't really even want to spend much time talking about this game. Logic honestly says to pick the Giants because at least we don't even know who's starting at quarterback for New England. Logic says to pick the New York Giants. But I'm actually going to go ahead and say, man, because one thing about Belichick has been that he does know how to shut down these young rookie quarterbacks. So I'm going to go ahead and just say, man, this is probably going to be a very sloppy game that I think New England will score more points in. And that would technically mean they win. So, yeah, man. I'm going to go ahead and give this one to the Patriots. But, man, there's not much to get hyped about in this game. Next game. The Pittsburgh Steelers, they finally fired Matt Canada. So a relief to all those Steelers fans, kind of, I guess you can say, early Christmas gift to all them. They're going to the jungle to face the Cincinnati Bengals without Joe Burrow. He is out for the rest of the year with a torn ligament. It is going to be Drake Browning. However, Cincinnati still has Jamar Chase. They still have T. Higgins. I don't know what his status is going to be, but you still have T. Higgins. You have Tyler Boyd. Man, I think that and you have Joe Mixon as well. I think that, and another thing too, there's really not much tape with Jake Browning in that offense. So with that being said, man, I think this is a game you'd expect Pittsburgh to win. I actually think that this is going to be a game where you're going to make it an emphasis, get the balls into the hands of your playmakers from Cincinnati, get a Jamar Chase going, get a T. Higgins going, really rely on that running game. I think this could be a big Joe Mixon game of sorts. And And I'm actually going to go ahead and say that the Bengals are going to pull this one out here against Pittsburgh. I think Jake Browning does just enough with getting the balls into the hands of his receivers. You really see Joe Mixon get going. Now I'm going to go ahead and say, man, I think the Bengals are going to pull this one out. I said this could definitely be an upset week around the NFL. And I'm going to go ahead and say that it is. And I'll go ahead and pick the Bengals here. Now, we got another game that just, man, is an absolute crap bowl. 1-9 Carolina, 3-7 Tennessee. I think the big story here is just, man, the Panthers, they cannot protect Bryce Young. They really don't have any weapons for him. And that's really a lot of the reason why he's suffering. And you really got to look at it. They do have Jeffrey Simmons, that Titans D-line. They can cause pressure. They can rattle the quarterback. That's probably going to happen to Bryce Young here. It's going to be another sloppy win. The Titans are going to do just enough with that defense to pick up the win. Man, Frank Reich, I don't think a lot of people were expecting it, but that seat is definitely, I think, getting hot in Charlotte. And now here, man, he could be one and done there. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one to the Titans. I think you have to with how dominant that D-line is. Next game, man, this is a good game. Imagine someone telling you this could go a long way towards determining who wins the AFC South in the preseason. Could definitely honestly have been a primetime flex. But, man, Jacksonville and Houston, CJ Stroud, he's been on fire. Those young receivers they have in Houston on fire. Trevor Lawrence and Calvin Ridley, that connection finally got going of sorts last week. This should be a good game here. This should definitely be a good game here in Houston. But, man, I really think with the Texans, the big story is they are 1 year away from, I think, actually being serious contenders. They could definitely make the playoffs this year, whether they win or lose. But I think they're 1 year away from being contenders. Jacksonville's just a little bit ahead of them in terms of actually being established. So I'm going to go ahead and say Jaguars pull it out in a close one, but they do pull it out here. I think that because Houston did beat them early in the year, I think Jacksonville, this makes it a split. They end up winning here versus Houston, and they do get in that driver's seat in the AFC South. All right. Now, this is a big game. Got a little announcement. I'll put a community post about it out in a little bit. But it's the Saints and Falcons. Anything can happen. The biggest game these two teams will play all season is against each other. Man, I'm going to tell you something. This game could definitely, it can always go either way between these two teams. You do not know how it's going to go. We have a lot of stars in the building. We're going to have a big concert pregame. Man, there's a lot of it. It's so hard to honestly predict this game. But come on, it's not hard to predict this game. We're going to beat the Saints. Look, come on, man. We're going to beat the Saints. But I'm going to pick the Falcons here. Not going to go into too much explaining about it. But I am going to pick the Falcons to win, obviously, versus the Saints. We have to beat the Saints. I cannot stress it enough. You have to beat this team. You have to. And I think we can. I definitely think we can. We'll talk about it later on this week. But, man, I'm going to go ahead and pick the Falcons right now. But you have to beat this team. You have to beat the Saints. The Aints. You have to beat the Aints. All right, heading into the 405 window. The Rams and Cardinals. The Rams had a nice win versus Seattle. They're looking to get back in it of sorts. Not completely dead yet in the NFC playoff race. The Cardinals, the one thing with Arizona is, man, they really don't have a lot of talent. That's the biggest story with them. And Kyler Murray's injury did not help their case out by any metric of the scale. This feels like a game that, man, it could go either way. The Cardinals could win this game, but it feels like a game where the Rams are going to pull away late and win this one here. I think Sean McVay, I don't know if you can say, this team is getting ready to make a run because I just don't think they have the pieces to do it, but I think they're kind of getting back into it, you can say, definitely. So, yeah, man, I'm going to go ahead and say that the Rams win this one. Next game you have here, Cleveland and Denver. These two teams have been surprising. Denver is the hottest team in football over the past month, man. They just broke Minnesota's 5-game winning streak. They're on a 4-game winning streak. And, man, it's not like they've just been beating chumps, man. They've been going out and beating legit teams. They beat the Chiefs. They beat the Bills. They beat the Vikings. I think it honestly continues, man. Going into Mile High for Cleveland, they really don't have good quarterback play. That Denver defense has definitely shown improvement. So I'm going to go ahead and give this one to the Broncos here, man. I think that defense could definitely be a big story here. Russ, he's been getting cooking. There's been some stuff to like in the past few weeks. Russell Wilson looking like his vintage self. So, yeah, man, I'm going to go ahead and say the Broncos win this one. 4:25, marquee Sunday game. The Eagles, they just won in Kansas City. They're coming back home to South Philly. Welcome the Bills into town. Man, to be honest, this feels like a game that you would probably expect Philadelphia to win. The Bills did win, but it was versus the Jets. But, man, I'm going to go ahead and say that I think the Bills are going to try to go on a little run here. I really do, man. The AFC is so wide open now that I really feel like this could be an opportunity for Buffalo to get in it. Kansas City does not look as impressive as they've had before. They really don't have good receivers. Baltimore, but can Lamar win in the playoffs is the big story there. So I think Buffalo, there's a good opportunity for Buffalo to get in this thing. The Dolphins, they're showing vulnerability. The Eagles, man, they just won a tough one versus Kansas City in the rain. So I feel like, man, Philadelphia, they're beat up and they're going into a bit of a gauntlet too. So it's not like Philadelphia. It's just going to be all roses and Philadelphia. They got a tough gauntlet coming up, and I think the Bills will go in there and actually beat them. Next game here, man, Kansas City and Las Vegas. Raiders kind of came back down to earth Sunday after winning 2 straight. The Chiefs, I think that they have to bounce back here, and I think they will. They understand that this is a game you have to win. You want to live up to that winning brand of football. I think you got to win this game. I think you do, man. The Raiders, they've kind of came back down to earth. It's Patrick Mahomes, man. Kelsey, I think that will be the big connection in this game. Those receivers, they got to work on catch the ball, though. But, yeah, I'll go ahead and pick the Chiefs. I'll say this is the lock of the week, man. So I'll go ahead and pick Kansas City here. Next game you have the Ravens, Chargers in LA, Sunday Night Football. This is another one, man. I think you're in for a good offensive showing in this game, actually. This is a game I think the Chargers have to win. If they want Brandon Staley to keep his job, this is a game the Chargers have to win. In Baltimore, they've kind of been sitting the past, few weeks, or, they got that mini bye, after the win versus Cincinnati, so kind of some rust is built up, they've eaten Thanksgiving, they're fatter going into LA. They're more stuffed. But I still think you're going to get a good offensive showing in this one. Man, this feels like the game the Chargers are going to win and kind of have to win. I actually think this is going to be a really good game. So I'll go ahead, give this one to the Chargers here. I just feel like, man, Baltimore, that Baltimore always comes down to earth a little bit around this time of year. And I think that's going to happen this year. All right. Monday night, wrapping up the weekend. This is Cyber Monday, actually. Wrapping up the weekend, man. Monday Night Football in Minnesota. I feel like, man, the story with Josh Dobbs, I don't think it's ended. I just think it took a little roadblock last week, but I think it continues on, man. I think Minnesota picks up the win here. I think they're the better team. Is Justin Jefferson back? Maybe. Who knows? I think what you're looking for in Chicago is, could Justin Fields be the answer for us? But, man, one way or another, you have to build around him. That's the thing. If he has the answer, you have to actually build around him. But with that being said, man, I'm going to go ahead, pick Minnesota to win here. And that is it, man. Thanksgiving weekend should be a fun, exciting NFL weekend. You got college football. Going to be a great weekend. Tonight, 9:00 Eastern. ATL Will, Noah, Jerry Poor. Noah's 44, the legendary, by the way. And maybe Wolf. We'll all be on the same panel talking Falcons Saints, man. So, yeah, very exciting. It is hate week. We got to go beat the Saints. The Aints, fuck the Aints. You know what energy we're on this week. But, yeah, man, got a good weekend of games coming up. I'll see you guys tonight. Until then, take care.